Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll Masechtas Bava Metzia Kuf Yud Tes, which is the last daf in this Masechta. But because it's such a short daf, we decided to conclude Kuf Yud Ches a little bit earlier. So we're going to begin on Kuf Yud Ches Amud Aleph by the top Mishnah, 4 lines from the top. Says the Masdisen, Hamotzi Zevel Rishus Harabim, a person who has fertilizer and it's out in the middle of the street. Hamotzi motzi v'mazavel mazavel. Says Rashi, Koloimer einu rashai lahashaiso sham. You can't just leave it there for an extended period of time. O motziu min harefes rishus harabim. You basically have to use it right away, and therefore you can take it out from your barn into the rishus harabim and then do what you have to do, and then afterwards take it out. And therefore that's acceptable, but you just can't leave it around. Then the Mishnah says, in Sharon teat rishus harabim, they're not allowed to soak teat, like mud, in the rishus harabim. Says Rashi, so yomim rabim. It could actually be for an extended period of time. We don't want you to do that. Ve'ein loivnin levenim. We also don't want you to be making bricks. Says Rashi, lafi shemishahi oisin yavshan, because it takes a long time for it to dry, so we don't want it to be there for an extended period of time as well. However, says the Mishnah, avol goivlin tit rishus harabim, we do allow you to knead this mud in a rishus harabim of a little levanim, but not again for making bricks. So you could do a process which you can do quickly, but then afterwards we want it out of the rishus harabim. Habone rishus harabim. Let's say a person is building, so maybe avanim, and he brings stones, maybe vaboine, and that's fine. Maybe vaboine boine. So it says Rashi, similar idea that mekabel miad maybe vaboine. You can take the bricks or whatever is all the raw materials, but you have to be building immediately. You can't just leave all your raw materials lying around. But if you're going to build, you can build. You got to do it right away. However, since it is in a rishus harabim where a lot of people are walking, so you are responsible if anyone gets injured. We also allow him to prepare his work 30 days in advance. Says Rashi, Mezamin rishus harabim ve'enu chayav b'nezikin. So the chiddush is that actually, according to him, if someone is injured, because we give them permission to do this in the rishus harabim, so the din is he's not going to be chayav in the case that someone is injured. Says the Gemara, why? At a time when a person takes out this manure, this fertilizer, a person is able to do this, take it out, but he is able to stack it up and prepare it for 30 days, because this is actually good that it's there, because since it's a place where some people walk, therefore by them stepping on this material, on this stuff, so it ends up preparing it better. Which actually we've seen previously in Bava Kama, that this is actually a way in which Yoshua understood, in order for us to be able to function in society, we have to have certain leniencies and allow people to do this. So therefore, apparently our mission is not like this. Now, the truth is, it's allowed. That doesn't mean that if someone doesn't get injured, you're going to be potter. As Rashi says, our mission is just giving you advice not to do it, because if you do it, there's a chance that someone can get injured and you'll be chayiv. However, the truth is that in the event that you want to, then you're given permission. You just have to be careful because you're chayiv if there's any damages. Vatanan, as we learn, so we actually asked the kasha. When it comes to their Chanukah, we allow you to put it outside, even though it's true, and this is referring to a store owner, he can put it outside of his store. And what happens if a camel, which is carrying pishtan, flax, and all of a sudden it lights up because of the Chanukiah that's there, and ends up burning down an entire building. So the Gemara over there in Bamim Adlikin said that the Chenveni, the owner of the store, is patim bershus because he was given permission. Mile bershus based in, says Rashi, Alma kol midi diabli rabban reshusa im hizik potter. Apparently, we see that anytime Basin gives you permission to do something, so therefore you're potter. So it's actually a kasha. The Gemara says, "Lo reshus mitzvah." It's actually because it was a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to light the Chanukiah, the menorah, outside for Parsum Nisa. And therefore, for that reason, in the event that when it comes to that situation, there's an issue, then you're pot. That's only because it's Rishus Mitzvah, which is on a higher level than Rishus Beistin. Okay. V'asanya, we learn, Kol Elu Shamru Mutern L'Kalka Rishus Harabim. All these situations, you're allowed to be Mekalka Rishus Harabim. He's a Chayv L'Shalim. Rabbi Yehuda poiter. Rabbi Yehuda is poiter. So again, we see that Rabbi Yehuda holds clearly in our case, not like our Mishnah. El Machforta must be like Rabbi Yehuda. Obviously, our Mishnah cannot be like Rabbi Yehuda based on that statement. Okay, Omer Abaye. So in this, Abaye continues and says as follows: Omer Abaye. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamaliel, Rabbi Shimon, these three opinions, who they all hold, anytime the Chachamim gave permission, the Hizik and someone got damaged because of a potter. Rabbi Yehuda had the Amr. Rabbi Yehuda, as we just said, Rabbi Yehuda says you're potter. In our Mishnah, he can put out this zevel, and therefore if someone gets injured because of it, you're still potter. Our Mishnah also, he says that you're able to prepare all of your work for your building even 30 days in advance. Fine. Dinan. Hoyama fine. Rav Shimon dinan hoyama mido ba'aliyah. Let's say a person is on the top floor. Sar shehi tachtov mazeva shloish tvachim. The mazeva on the bottom has to be 3 tvachim thick. Ubekira tefach. Or dealing with an oven. In order that there's this not massive fire, you need to have some insulation of the fire. It has to be a tefach thick. And if there's damage, you have to pay. No. The reason why we mention these things is to teach us that if you follow the laws properly and then there's damage, you're going to be potter because you did everything that you needed to do and you're an oinus. Tanabana. Hachatzav shemoser lasatas hasatas chayev. Let's say the person who cuts the rocks from the mountains and he gives this to the chiseler. So as soon as it's handed over to the chiseler, he's chayev. Everything happens. Hasatas shemoser lachamor hachamor chayev. Once the chiseler gives it over to the donkey driver, so now it's in the donkey driver's hands. Now he's chayev. Hachamor shemoser lakatav hakatav chayev. As soon as the donkey driver gives this over to the porter, then the porter's chayev. Hakatav shemoser labanai habanai chayev. And then finally, once it's given over to the builder, then the builder is chayiv for damages. Habanai shemoser la'ad rikal chayiv. So actually, one more step, the builder who gives it over to the expert bricklayers, so then they'll be chayiv. So v'im haniach even el hadimus, they put a stone on the wall itself. Once it's done, v'hezika, and then there's damage afterwards, kulon chayav l'shalom. Everyone is chayiv. So before the process, as everyone is going from one person to the next, once it's transferred to that person is chayiv. Then that person who gave it over has been relieved of this chiyuv to have to pay for damages. However, once it's a done deal, then all of a sudden everyone's chayiv. Says Rashi, chayiv zeh shehi biyado chayiv b'nizka. The one who is it's in his hands is chayiv. Im tipul miyadav, if it falls from his hand, v'hizik as acherem, and damages someone, or to shaver, it breaks, hu chayiv l'shalom. So he's obligated to pay. However, when it comes to once it's built, then everyone's chayiv. Says Rashi, kulan elu shahoyu shutvin b'molacha achas. They're all considered to be partners in order for this building to be constructed. You have to go through all these different steps. So therefore, everyone is going to be responsible. chayiv v'kulin paturin. We learn only the last person is chayiv, not the first one, even after it's all been built. So this is a question 4, TB 16. Ukasha kan b'schiris kan b'kablanos. It depends on what their role is. Says Rashi, if we're dealing with schirus, that we're dealing with someone who's paid for his job, so therefore hachor and chayiv. Once you did your job, that's it. But kablanus is that they're all contracted. Kul and chayavin. In that situation, they're all chayiv. Heichadul nafmol miyad echmehem yalkul lishmor shnehim yushavas yafa. Every one of them is going to be responsible. So question 4, Moser hachatzav lasates lachamar v'chulu mi chayiv b'nizka. Once it's already built, so he says b'kablonus kulam chayavin b'schirus chayiv ha'ad rikal lavadoy, which is the expert bricklayers. This is what I wrote for question 16. Bekablonis kulam chayavin b'shava equal. B'schirus rak ha'acharoim. Okay, that'll be the last question for Bava Metzia for those 2 tests. Let's see the next Mishnah. It says the final masnisin in this Masechta shtei ginais. You have 2 gardens, and they're owned by different people, but it's zu al gav zu, one on the other. So there's a higher level, then there's a lower level, and then there's this vertical part in between them. So vayark ben tayim. So you have vegetables growing on this vertical surface this way. The question is the vertical surface, which is connecting the lower garden to the upper garden. If the vegetables are growing out in this part, who owns that? So, and who owns those vegetables? Rameir Oimer Shel Elyoin. It belongs to the upper garden. Rabbi Yehuda Oimer Shel Tachtoin. So you have a machlokus who gets these vegetables. Rameir. Im Yirtza Elyoin Likachas Afarai. I'll tell you the logic why the top one gets it. Because if the top one wants to take out all the dirt, because from the vertical, so everything on this side, again, this is the bottom, so the top, anything growing here, this is his earth. Right? So if he wants, he could remove all the earth, just plow it through, and then there's no possibility that those vegetables could have grown. So it makes sense, according to Rameir, that the top gardener, the owner of that garden, should be the one who gets it. So that's his logic. Im yirtza ha'elyon likachas afaro in kanyark. Rabbi Yehuda im yirtza hatachton l'malos as ginaso in kanyark. Yeah, but the bottom guy, he could also fill it up with let's say, with a swimming pool or something, or with something else, and then all of a sudden, there's no way that those vegetables will be able to grow without proper air circulation. Fine, in Kanyar. If both of them are able to protest, we have to figure out how this yerk is going to live. And the way that this vegetable is going to live is based on the earth. Therefore, the top one gets it. Rav Shimon, Kol she'elyon yachal liv sheites yadai l'lital harihu shalo. So he actually has a different approach. The guy in the top, if he's lying on his stomach and he's reaching down, he can pluck as many of those vegetables as he wants. Those are his because they're within arm's reach. Vashar shel tachtoin, but the rest of them belong to the guy in the below. Says the Gemara, Amar if we're talking about, the Rashi says the sharshe hayarik, the actual roots of the vegetable, that definitely belongs to the top one because those roots are getting its nutrients from the earth. He pligi b'naifai. The machlokus is the foliage. Rameir saver shadi naifa basri karai. The foliage is also connected to the roots, and therefore he gets everything. The top one says Rashi, "Lafishin twin ba'aviro." Okay, let's hold off. Rabbi Yehuda savar lo armin and shadi naifa basri karai. Says Rashi now, "Lafishin twin ba'aviro shel tachton pligbahu." Since it's in the airspace of the lower owner's property, that's why there's a machlokus when it comes to its foliage. that's protruding outward into the air, so that foliage maybe belongs to the bottom one. Okay. Anything that comes out from the trunk, and from the roots, belongs to the owner of the land. Rabbi Yehuda Omer min hageza shel bal ha'ilon. No, actually, anything that comes from the trunk belongs to the owner of the tree, since it doesn't go. He doesn't hold you go busser the ikaroi. Umin ashrashim shel bal karka, and therefore from the roots he does agree it goes to the bal karka. However, anything which is from the trunk upward does not necessarily belong to the owner of the land. It can belong to the owner of the tree. Again, we're talking about two separate owners. As we continue to this short last daf on Kuf Yud Tes Amud Aleph, Utnan Nami Gabi Arla. Also, when it comes to dinim of Arla, as you know, the first 3 years a person is not allowed to derive any hana from these fields, or trees rather, in which there's fruit growing. You have to let them just remain for the first 3 years. If you have a tree that's growing from the trunk, from its roots, chayva arla, divra meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer min geza potter min potter min shrashim chayv. Anything that grows from the trunk is potter, and from the roots is chayv. Why? Says Rashi, my geza, my shrashim. Geza, the trunk, is kol sharoya pnei chama. Anything that could see the sun. Shroshim she'en roim pnei chama, and the roots cannot see, and therefore that is the explanation as to whether you're chay ba'arla or not on these things. Okay, says Rashi, chay ba'arla hasamach karka b'soy shloisha kekarkahu. Anything that's within 3 tfachim of the ground is like the ground itself. V'yafagav deloy ma'ara mamish, even though it's not from the earth itself. Yanik shdei noifo basar ikaroi. We say that it goes, the foliage, if you will, goes after the ikar, the roots itself. Utsricha di'ashmi'inan kamaisam. If we only mention the case of our Mishnah, b'hakam Rabbi Yehuda, only there would Rabbi Yehuda say that we go after the bottom gardener. Misham de Memoina. Here we're talking about monetary loss. Of a Gabi Arla, when we're dealing with a concept of Arla, which is not a mammon issue, the question is Isser. Are you allowed to eat these fruits or not? So Ema Moidel Rameir. Maybe he's going to hold like Rameir, in which Rameir said that Hayotzim in Hageza min Ashrashim Chayavan Ba'arla de Rameir. Rameir is just we should go strict when it comes to dinim of Isser and say that no matter what, anything will be chayav, even the roots, even that comes from the trunk. It doesn't matter if it's above that which could see the sun or not see the sun. It doesn't matter. You should be chayav either way because we're dealing with Isser. So by mamoin, maybe again you could either say hefker based on hefker, or it's the dinim of mamoin and Isser. We don't learn out mamoin meisurai loyalfinon. So therefore, you would need to teach us the din of Isser. The yitmar baham bahakam rameir. Maybe only over there is rameir strict. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda sricha. Maybe he agrees to Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. Omer Rav Shimon. Actually, let's first look at question TA 15. Iyon hayotzim min hageza o mihashrashim. Okay, so that's what we just saw, which is really just Kuf Yud Tes. So, min hageza, anything that comes, let's just make sure we get this. Ilan hayotzim min hageza, umin hashrashim chayav arla. Dibra Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer min hageza potter, min hashrashim chayav. So, anything that comes from the Geza, let's go slow. From the Geza, it's a machlokas tanoim, right? Because it's according to Rabbi Yehuda, he actually says anything that comes from the trunk, in which Rashi said that's referring to Geza kol shiroy pnei chama. So it's a machlokas, anything that is able to see the sun, whether or not that's chayv and arla. But anything that's below, they do not argue. So mina geza put the tanoi Mary Rehuda. Mina shrashim kol michayev. The Iri, as Rashi says, begezeb toich gimel samach karka. Anything which is 3 tfachim from the ground has the same status as the ground itself. Now it's TA 15. Okay, good. That's the end of all of our questions to this Masechta. Let's just finish this Masechta. So the guy in the top, if he can stretch his hand down, whatever vegetables he can take are his. Everything else belongs to the bottom one. Rab Shimon Omer, Kol Shal Yon Yachal Fashi B'chul. Omer to be Rab Yanai. Uvovad Shlo Yi Ones. He should not forcefully stretch himself. He can just take it with ease. Not that he has to stretch himself and pull his shoulder blade out. Okay. Boy Rav Anan, so they asked a question. Maybe it was Rabbi Yirmiyah. Magil Noivin, Magil Bikaro. Let's say he could reach physically the foliage, but not the actual roots. Or for that matter, Magili Karva in Magil Nofo my Teku. So we're not sure. Does it mean he has to be able to grab both with ease, or one or the other? And once he can grab one with ease, even though the other one would be difficult, but since he can grab one with ease, he can pull it out. Teku. So the Gemara concludes as follows: Amar Ephraim Safra Talmido Shel Reish Lakish. It was said Mishum Reish Lakish Halacha Reb Shimon. The halacha, in fact, is like Reb Shimon, that you can just stretch your hand out and take. That would be sufficient. Amrua Kamei de Shvar Malka, and this was said in front of Shvar Malka. Amrlahu Apirion Nimte Reb Shimon. Graciousness should be extended to Reb Shimon. Why Shvar Malka? What's so special about Shvar Malka? Says Rashi. Tais is actually quoting Rashi. Persha Kunchus, the Shvar Malka Hayuboki Bahalachis. Apparently, Shvar Malka was an expert in halachos. So when the Shvar Malka heard that this was the din of Rav Shimon, graciousness was extended to Rav Shimon. Let's see Rashi. The Yistiam Shvar Malka Shmuel. Actually, Shvar Malka is not just some stam person. This is another name for Shmuel. Then Meyushaba Demai Amrua Ilahad Rav Shimon Mastisan, not to Shmuel Loy Havi Yadal Mastisan. So it's kind of hard to understand exactly what this is referring to. Like he didn't know this Mishnah. It's like some big Chiddush. Ilahad, fine. Appear in Rashi says is Chen Shalanu Han Allah Habayis Valiyah Slikam Masaktas Bava Metzia Han Allah Habayis Valiyah Slikam Masaktas Bava Metzia Han Allah Habayis Valiyah Slikam Masaktas Bava Metzia. We are now going to continue starting tomorrow Baba Basra. Adkan.